After I stayed late for the 5th time that week, my boss tossed his keys at me and snickered, "Maybe you should just sleep here, it's not like you have a life anyway." Everyone bursted into laughter as I caught them midair. I didn't say a word. I just quietly notified HR, and when new management came in, he was the first name they cut without a second thought. I never planned on staying at that job forever. It was supposed to be a stepping stone, a solid resume builder while I figured out my next move. But like a lot of people, I got stuck. Rent was high, health insurance was tied to that paycheck, and switching jobs felt like a bigger risk every year. I worked in a medium-sized tech company based out of Richmond, Virginia. The kind of place that pretended to be a family, but ran you dry the second a deadline loomed. My role was data systems analyst, which meant when something broke, or if something big needed testing before it launched, I was one of the names they called first. For a while, I didn't mind. The money wasn't amazing, but it was stable. I didn't have to deal with clients directly, and the office was just a short drive from my place. Then Dan got promoted. Dan was a department lead who should have stayed in sales. He was loud, cocky, and fake nice in that way where everything he said felt like he was mocking you. He called everyone pal or champ if he didn't remember your name, which he often didn't. Once Dan took over, everything shifted. Suddenly, late nights weren't optional, they were expected. He'd forward urgent tasks at 4:55 p.m. and be out the door by 5:01. If you didn't respond right away, he'd send another email to the whole team asking if someone else could pick up the slack. By the 3rd week, I was regularly pulling 10 to 12-hour days. I kept telling myself it would calm down. It didn't. What really got to me wasn't the hours. It was the way he treated people. Like we were props in a show where he was the star. It all came to a head on a Thursday night. I remember the exact time, 7:42 p.m. I was finishing a critical software patch that needed to go live the next morning. I was the last person from my team still there, but a few junior staffers were in the main area finalizing some reports. They were all new hires, and Dan liked using them as his audience. He walked out of his office, jingling his keys in that obnoxious way he did when he wanted attention. I barely looked up. I was exhausted. Then, he tossed his keys at me. I caught them on instinct. He smirked and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe you should just sleep here. It's not like you have a life anyway." The room went quiet for a second. Then laughter. Not nervous laughter. They were actually laughing. One guy even clapped like Dan had said the funniest thing all week. Dan walked out, proud of himself. I didn't say anything. I just stared at my screen, the key still in my hand. Then I calmly stood up, walked to his office, and set the keys on his desk. I sat back down and finished my work. That night, I didn't go home angry. I went home focused. I started gathering emails, screenshots, documentation. I didn't make anything up, I didn't need to. Dan was sloppy. He sent unprofessional messages on company channels. Forwarded client praise to his boss with my name cut out of the email thread. I had proof of him lying about who completed work, pushing deadlines back and blaming the team, and even a few offhand comments he made that, if read by the right person, would raise some eyebrows. I didn't send anything yet. Instead, I quietly reached out to HR and scheduled a private meeting. I didn't come in guns blazing. I told them I was struggling with work-life balance. I explained I felt uncomfortable with some of the leadership practices in my department. I asked if others had reported the same thing. Their body language told me everything, they had. One of the HR reps asked me to send over anything I had, just for context. I sent it that evening. Clean, organized, labeled. No accusations. Just facts. Weeks passed. Dan started acting strange. He was overly nice to me in meetings. Started copying me on every email. Sent a team appreciation message out of nowhere. Even offered to lighten my load on a project I'd been handling solo for months. I knew something was coming. Then one morning, an email landed in everyone's inbox. An all-hands meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. It wasn't a normal team meeting. It had the name of the new regional director CC'd. We hadn't met her yet, but we'd heard she was doing a full audit of leadership across departments. We all filed into the conference room. Dan was jittery. He smiled too much. Joked with the new director about the coffee being better than what they serve in the C-suite. She didn't laugh. She stood at the head of the table, looked around the room, and said clearly, "We're making some structural changes today." Then she pulled out a list. And Dan's name was at the top. When she said Dan's name first, he straightened in his seat. He must have thought he was getting a new title. A promotion. Some fancy-sounding position like executive department lead or regional advisor. His grin stretched like he was ready to shake hands and accept an award. Then the director said, flat and cold, "Daniel Price, you're being released from your position, effective immediately. Please collect your personal items and wait for HR to escort you out." The room dropped into dead silence. It was like someone shut off all the air in there. Dan froze. "Wait, what? You can't be serious." She didn't blink. "We've reviewed several reports over the last few months, and based on our findings, this decision is final. You'll receive details on your exit package from HR." Dan looked around like he was expecting someone, anyone, to back him up. His eyes landed on me for a second. Just a flicker. I didn't react. I kept my face blank. He stammered something about misunderstandings and people not getting his sense of humor, but the director ignored him. She looked down at her notes and called the next name. That was it. No second chance. No speech. No fake praise. Dan left the room red-faced, his smile gone. I thought it would feel good. And in some way, it did. But not the way I expected. I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt done. Like I'd finally shut a door that should have been closed months ago. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. After Dan left, things got weird. First, the company announced a team restructuring. They promoted 2 junior managers and merged 3 teams under one department. That should have been a good thing, except the person they chose to lead all 3 teams was someone I didn't trust, Morgan. Morgan had always kept her head down. She didn't speak up in meetings, didn't take sides, just nodded and kept notes. But after Dan left, she changed. Fast. She stopped being quiet. Started giving sharp orders. Held meetings twice a day. She said she wanted to bring order back to the team, but it felt more like control. I stayed out of it at first. Just did my work and kept my head low. Then I started getting called out in front of others. Little things. A file not labeled the way she liked. A task submitted 10 minutes late because I was helping someone else. Nothing major, but every time, she made a point to do it in public. "You know, if you're going to act like you're above the rules, maybe you don't belong on this team," she said once, right in front of 3 interns. It was clear she had it out for me. At first, I thought maybe she was just trying to prove herself. But then I got an anonymous message from someone in accounting. No name, just a message sent through the internal feedback tool. "She knows you were behind Dan's firing. Be careful." My stomach dropped. I didn't reply, obviously. But the next few weeks confirmed it. Morgan started denying my requests without explanation. Pulled me off high-profile projects I'd been running for months. When I asked why, she gave vague answers, just redistributing responsibilities or trying a new approach. Then one day, I walked into work and found my access to the client server revoked. Just like that. I asked IT. They said Morgan had flagged my account for review. That was a red flag. I went straight to HR. I wasn't about to get blindsided. I explained everything, again. How Morgan had started targeting me. How it started after Dan was fired. I kept calm, but I made it clear, I wasn't going to be quiet this time. They promised to look into it. 2 days later, I got called into another meeting. This time, the director was there again. When I walked into the conference room, I knew something was off. The new director, Melissa, was already seated, arms crossed, with a folder in front of her. Next to her was a guy I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, sharp suit, glasses, stone face. He introduced himself as Daniel Lynch, from Compliance and Internal Risk. That's when I knew this wasn't just a check-in. Melissa got straight to it. We've been conducting a quiet internal audit, she said. Not just on Dan Price, but the department he ran, and the people closely tied to him. I nodded, not sure where this was going. Daniel Lynch opened the folder. Your name came up in multiple reports. I leaned forward. Reports about what? He looked me dead in the eye. Favoritism. Backchannel influence. Targeted takedowns. For a second, my brain couldn't keep up. You think I had power over that man? I laughed, but no one else did. Melissa cut in, calm but firm. We're not accusing you. Yet. But someone is. And they provided enough written statements that were required to investigate. I sat there in silence. My heart pounded. Who? I finally asked. Daniel closed the folder. That's confidential. I wasn't stupid. I knew who it was. Morgan. I stayed composed. So what happens now? Melissa tapped her pen. You'll be temporarily reassigned while the investigation is underway. Access will remain limited. Your cooperation is expected. It wasn't a request. That night, I didn't sleep. I just kept thinking, this woman wants me gone. First, she watched me get Dan fired. Then she stepped over his corpse into the role she always wanted. Now she was clearing the board of anyone who remembered how she got there. And the worst part? It was working. But what Morgan didn't know was that I wasn't alone this time. I reached out to 3 people, former coworkers who had left the company in the last year. Each had their own story about Morgan, how she sabotaged them, took credit for work, or quietly made sure they didn't pass probation. One guy, Darren, had even filed a complaint before he quit. He never heard back. I asked if they still had emails, messages, anything. They did. I compiled it. Everything. Not just what she'd done to me, but to them too. This time, I didn't send it to HR. I went straight to Melissa. I asked for a one-on-one, off the calendar. She agreed. When we sat down, I laid it out. Calm. Clear. No drama. Just facts. This is who's really pulling strings, I said. She played quiet for years. Waited for the right time. And now she's clearing out anyone who might expose her. Melissa read through it without speaking. Her face didn't change. When she finished, she looked up and said one word. Prove it. I nodded. Give me a week. The next 7 days were the longest of my life. I showed up early, kept my head down, did my reassigned tasks without complaint. Every hour I wasn't working, I was building my case. Dates. Times. Memos. Old Slack threads and private messages. I even called a friend who used to be in our IT department. He helped me confirm Morgan had been in contact with Dan after he was fired, something that was a violation, since Dan was under NDA during the investigation. I pieced it together like a puzzle. Morgan had waited. She knew Dan was slipping. She didn't defend him because she was protecting herself. But after he was gone, she didn't want anyone left who could say how close they actually were. And I was the biggest threat to that lie. The week ended with a second meeting. Melissa. Daniel from compliance. And a third person this time, a senior executive from corporate. Melissa motioned for me to sit. We've reviewed everything you submitted, including new material found through IT. She looked tired. Like she'd been digging too. What we found, she continued, shows a clear pattern of manipulation, dishonesty, and retaliatory behavior from Morgan Shelby. Effective immediately, she is being placed on administrative leave pending formal termination proceedings. I didn't react. I just sat there, fists clenched under the table. But she wasn't done. However, Melissa said, this audit also brought something else to light. She pushed a file toward me. My stomach turned when I saw the printout, an anonymous email chain. One I had written months ago under a fake name when I first started collecting dirt on Dan. I'd sent it to upper management to push them to look into him. I thought it had disappeared. You impersonated a third party, Daniel said. That violates internal communication policy. I opened my mouth to explain, but he cut me off. We're not firing you, he said. But there will be consequences. They demoted me. Same pay, for now, but no more lead roles. No more big accounts. No promotion track for at least a year. I walked out of that meeting feeling hollow. Morgan was done. Her office was cleared by the end of the day. She didn't even get to say goodbye. Dan never got another job in the industry. Word spread fast after the termination. I heard through the grapevine he tried to sue for wrongful dismissal and lost. But I didn't win either. I still work there, but now I sit in the back of the office. I do what I'm asked. Nothing more. I don't speak up in meetings anymore. I stopped staying late. People leave me alone now. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. I got what I wanted, but I became part of the mess along the way. I didn't just expose two toxic people. I played the game like they did. And the company didn't forget that. So, yeah. Dan tossed me his keys and laughed like I was nothing. Now he's gone. Morgan thought she could climb over the rubble. Now she's gone too. And me? I'm still here. But I'm not the same person I was. I don't care about climbing anymore. I just want peace.